Welcome to our podcast. This is a space where we bring together voices from across the social care sector to reflect on practice, policy, and professional development. I'm your host, Hernán Tena, and today we'll be exploring a topic that lies at the heart of professional growth and care quality. My guest today is Bernie, a specialist in professional learning and organizational development. Bernie, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Hernan, for having me.
Bernie, let's begin with the fundamentals. In your view, why is continuous professional development so essential for social care practitioners?
I suppose, Hernan, throughout my career, I'm 25 years in the area of social care practice in various roles. And I've been a trainer for the last 15 years, and I established a Be Smart training company because I do believe so strongly in the quality and continuous professional practice. Because throughout my career, sometimes down the years, you see that training is provided, but it doesn't necessarily translate into practice, or it wasn't something that was huge focus on. Now I know obviously with the establishment of CRU and CPD and stuff, it's become more prevalent to meet regulatory requirements and things like that. But it's much more than that. Throughout the years, um, social care, I feel the landscape of it has changed. The issues within society, and that people face challenges themselves, whether it's in children's services, even to access resources for some people. So social care practitioners really are the heartbeat of the care of individuals. And I really think it's not just about compliance, it's about really building emotionally attuned teams that are resilient, because resilience is required, because you have all of the secondary and vicarious trauma and things like that. But it's for people to have the confidence to be able to work within the sector, and also to be able to show emotionally intelligence and be compassionate, which I think it really it's a fundamental value that people need. It's much more than qualifications. The emotional intelligence is something that's really, really required. um I think through the process then of continuous professional development, obviously there is an onus on us now with the regulations and the professionalization of the sector. But again, it's what we'd always say to people on training courses: you're here because you have to be, maybe with your organization or whatever, but it's about what it can do for you as a practitioner. It's, you know, I know you're here because you have to be, but it's how it's going to benefit you, how it's going to benefit the people that you're caring for. So it's about equipping people with, the most up to date models. For example, Welltree model or TCI or whatever updates are in safeguard and relational tools. So keeping people up to date, first of all, with the latest developments, and also then the quality of care. I feel that when people do feel skilled and supported, then that the people that we care for do experience greater stability, trust, and emotional safety that we provide to people.
That's a very important distinction. Seeing CPD not as a requirement, but as an ongoing commitment to excellence. And in that road, Bernie, how does this ongoing learning contribute to the quality of care itself?
Yeah, so I think some misconceptions that maybe, and again, just, you know the culture sometimes can be just that they see training as just being, we have to get it done for new staff or underperforming staff, um and it's seen as a one-off event. So it's somebody attends a training course or whatever, but it's actually it's a continuous journey. Because what I'd always say is we learn more from the people that we care from it for every day, sometimes, than we ever learn from a book. And I'm not knocking academia by any means, but I mean it's the lived experience with that person. It's that person's essence. It's their how they perceive things, how we communicate, how they communicate through behaviors and things like that. So I think, you know, on the job experience, while it's it's really invaluable, because that's what creates the culture of where we work. But if there's unreflected practice, that leads to poor habits as well and poor culture. So it's really a case of making sure that the reflection occurs in the workplace. It's my whole master's thesis was based around the translation of training into practice, just based on my own lived experiences working and kind of governing the floor. And I was like, what are the barriers that we're encountering here? So one of the biggest things is that sometimes people aren't prepared through supervision for upcoming trainings, and then when they come back onto the floor, there might be no real reflection on, well, what was that experience like for you? How can you bring that into your practice? What does it mean for the people that we care for? So I think really that's why it's so important, and then to get the quality, because it's talking about when we deliver training, thinking about the quality of it. It has to be relevant to the people that you. It's not just a generic. Here's a training program. It has to be relevant to each person in that room, and it's peer learning from each other as well. And then the trainers can bring lived experiences or real examples of, well, this is what that actually looks like in practice, or here's an example of something that you know kind of, I suppose, entrenches the concept that we're thinking about now, because otherwise they're only concepts. And again,
That's
just
it.
to
Yeah.
get people to kind of think about reflecting in the moment, and engagement is really important. So kind of having people, again, that we make the training sessions interactive and reflective at the same time. I think that's what's really important. And also then that we work with companies to kind of look at where possible that management are involved in. Okay, so how can we tailor this session for your staff, or is there anything that you'd like us to focus on or highlight that you might be encountering as an issue, but we just bring it in a kind of a natural way, and then
You,
we're
you
able to
bring
use real life
you
scenarios.
bring a very interesting point there, and earlier you spoke about misconceptions, and I wonder if you encounter about any misconceptions about professional training in the sector when you bring up the translation of the training to the practice, plus the misconceptions. Are there any patterns in terms of misconceptions about professional training in the social care sector?
Yeah, well, I suppose some of the findings even that came up in my own research was that, um, variations, attitudes were a big thing. So attitudes to, like I said, to training, but sometimes attitudes of people attending training, or sometimes it's we found that attitudes of trainers, because sometimes, and this can sometimes be problematic within organizations where they have internal trainers, and maybe the trainers feel that they're not being taken seriously because it's like their colleague, or that they find that there's kind of barriers there as well with that, in, like I said, taking it serious, and you know it's kind of to support the internal systems then is what we need to look at. But yeah, definitely reflective practice. There are things that come up a little bit as well. Having it as a I suppose, a, what would you call it, a privileged space for people to get their support. So I find sometimes people don't utilize their supervision maybe the way that they should. They
Yeah.
see it as it all being, oh, the supervisor is just something that happens. But it's like, what do you need to bring back? How can you prepare for your supervision? And like I said, look at it as being a two-way process. And then
That's it.
how is your training embedded into that, or queries that you might have, that you're working in tandem then with your supervisor to kind of ensure that you're looking at your current, the people that you care for, and
Yeah.
then you're able to translate that into the lived experience of your own center. Does
Yeah,
that make
and
sense?
if we delve into it does, yeah, it does, and it leads us to our next section, which is about training quality. So, from your
Yeah,
experience, what defines high quality training in social care, or in general, really? What's
yeah.
high quality training? How can we define that?
Yeah. So I suppose kind of what I kind of mentioned earlier, making it interactive. I think that's the key, because everybody in the room has experience, and even people who think they've no experience, they've maybe just come through college or something else, and they have the most up to date theories that might be out there as well. But it's about then the volume of experience in the room, because sometimes you could have very experienced people, but for want of a better word, might be a little bit stale. We're in the same place for a long time. We're doing the same things, and we find it hard to kind of move forward with the the new ways or the new theories or the new trainings and things like that. So making it, I suppose, engaging people, getting people to reflect on where they're at, and kind of being able to kind of read people in the room as well. Um, and sometimes it ends up becoming where it's almost like it becomes a reflective session in some elements. So it depends on what you're delivering, of course, but it's
I
reflecting on
suppose
what is actually happening.
I
Yeah,
suppose I suppose relevance is key as well, because how can
yeah,
can training remain relevant given the constant changes in policy and social dynamics? Or for example, there are some trainings in the social care sector that you have to do them every year, but trainers don't change a comma. Do you know,
yeah, yeah,
one of them could be crisis prevention. You have to do it
yeah.
every year, and every year is the same thing. So how to keep social care workers engaged when they're receiving the same training over and over?
Exactly. So it's about bringing new things to the table, really. And we're looking at say for example, the TCI refresher has to be completed every 6 months. So what we're trying to do, because we, for example, we test on that every 6 months, theory test and whatever. So we're kind of saying, look, people have to be prepared coming to the refresher, that they already know their material, they've been preparing for the theory test, because we don't want to be just, it becomes that if they're using the concepts and everything in work, they'll already be familiar with the language. When we do refresh somewhat on that, it's more about, we want to start bringing focused elements into the training. So more recently, we went back to look at in recent refreshers, because obviously TCI and a lot of other things are based around trauma and being trauma informed. So we brought that right back as a topic in itself within the training, to expand on that more, look at the spiral of negativity that can occur, going back to really the key focus of behaviors as a form of communication, so, and the impact of trauma on the brain, and the impact on, where there's been, when we're working with children, say for example, when they're come from under a child protection order, and looking at the effect of neglect on the brain, and how people can regulate or not regulate, and things like that. So it's about being able to take a key area then from the training and do a more in-depth piece on that, to make the refresher more interesting and qualitative, you know. So I think that's what it's about as well.
And I suppose a reflective practice plays a big role there, I suppose, in sustaining learning after a
Absolutely.
session. Like a reflection, that's one of our goals. For example, with the Quran magazine, it's not about writing articles, it's about writing reflections to practice, from
Yeah.
social care workers to social care workers. So what's the role of a reflective practice when it comes to training, for example, or post training?
Yeah, post training would be the key. It's about looking then, first of all, it's having everybody on the same page, isn't it? So that everybody has received the same type of training. Because obviously, if you're implementing things, you need to have it systemic as well, so that we're consistent for the people that we look after. Because consistency obviously is key, and it can get a little bit chaotic with multi-carer environments, for example. So it's looking at the consistency, that everybody has that same playing field. So it is important for new recruits and things like that to have, but also from the top down. So your leaders, whoever's governing an organization, should have the same training to be able to oversee the systems and things like that. And only then can it become very reflective. Because if your supervisors or your leaders don't exactly know what they're overseeing, or what training has been given or provided, and they're not familiar with the content themselves, it makes it very hard then to bring that into the reflective space. So I think with team meetings, even for example, even keeping the policies alive, because yourself, on induction, there's like, you have this,
Yeah.
well, maybe now it's more it's digital probably, but we had these great big folders, and part of your induction was to sit down and read every policy, and you were reading them, and then after a while you're kind of going, oh god, and I kind of half forget what I was reading back there, because I'm on this one, and it was overwhelming. So we'd always say, even to look at bringing a policy even into a team meeting once a month, the most significant policies, having a reflective piece on that, then look at what training relates to that, break it down under the national standards. These are the policies that fall under this standard, and what does that look like in practice? So I think that that's what's really important. And then obviously you're debriefing, because it is such a high paced, emotionally, sometimes emotionally challenging arena to work in, and burnout can be quite high. So it's giving that support in it and bringing people back to the key essentials, but also recognizing the impact on the individual, and being able to have that debrief or the support in, so it becomes where people themselves are recovering on higher outcomes, where we might have incidents or difficulties within the workplace. So I think that's what it is. It's about looking at it in the team meeting, looking at it in individual supervisions, making sure your debriefs as well are fully relevant to, fully reflective, I would say. How
And
was
I
that
suppose
person feeling within that space?
giving everyone a chance for input, putting their own input, and
Yeah.
giving their point of view and making changes to the policies. That's way everyone feels included. Right.
Yes.
Right, Bernie, let's talk about the role of organizations. Many practitioners say that what happens after training determines its success, which I
Yeah.
totally agree with.
Yeah.
How can organizations support staff to translate learning into daily practice? What can we do
Yeah.
as the organization besides giving them the training or giving them the opportunity to get the training?
Yeah. So I think definitely you're looking at the culture in the organization to do that. That is supportive. That we're seen as, it is, training is taken seriously. And again, like I said, it's not just, okay, we're sending you there and that's grand. It's not about the cert. I always say it's not just about the cert. It's about the quality of it. It's about making sure that, um role modeling, so your leaders on the floor are walking the walk, so they're role modeling, for people who, might need, haven't encountered situations before, whatever. They're talking about it, so constantly bringing it up when they're reviewing. So again, going back to leadership, when you're reviewing documentation, are the concepts being written in? Is the language that we're using in our model of care, or for example your TCI or your safety intervention, or all of the other things that we do, is it being written up the way, so quality report writing training even is a big one. Are people being objective and not subjective? Are people writing with emotion? Is everything factual? So even the oversight of your daily reports give an opportunity to reflect with a person, because you can see emotion written all over reports sometimes. So that will give you an indication of where that person was at the time, or how it impacted them, because what might affect me might not affect the next person, and vice versa. So
Yes,
it's
yeah,
about looking at the magnitude for the individual, and then so supporting that, I suppose, but again, bringing it back in, so leaders are trained in everything that the staff are trained in, that they're overseeing that we're encouraging open, transparent communication as well. I always say to say we need support with something isn't a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength, and it's a
that's
sign of
it. Yeah,
reflection. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
And
Because we're not robots.
it's all about creating a culture that values learning rather than simply attending training just to tick the box.
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
know,
The culture is really the defining factor, isn't it?
that's it.
So it's then follow up, maybe workshops or things like that. There's also people in teams. It's not always about maybe coming to the likes of us for training. There's so much experience within teams, and you might have multidisciplinary, um, qualifications within teams as well, or somebody might have attended a workshop or something that wasn't true work. Can you create a little piece on that and bring it back to the team? Something that's could be seen as valuable, or you could even take a piece of one of the trainings that you've done and ask somebody to create a reflective piece on it and bring it back to a team meeting. So keeping it alive that way. We've often done that in the past in organizations I worked in, and it was very beneficial. And people peer learning, then we're learning from each other. Somebody might have a psychology qualification, for example, and they were able to bring a piece more about the trauma in the brain, and then the social care practitioners were able to bring in their pieces, and it was very, very valuable. So I think learning champions within our teams, recognizing our skill sets within the teams, coaching, workshops, then integration, like I said, into supervision, also into appraisals. And then, like I said, it should be treated, I think CPD should be treated then as a professional identity, for want of a better
Yeah,
term, not a compliance task. So
that's
it's
it.
about a professional identity, and then it's also about positive feedback. So celebrating growth and the strengths that we see within the teams, and then linking it as well with career progression. So that we're marking that for people, and we're kind of acknowledging all of the positives within the sector, because sometimes I think because it can be a difficult sector, there can be a lot of negativity attached to it, and that's a
That's
shame.
it. Yeah.
You know, it really is, because it's lovely. I always say it's a privilege to be able to
Yeah.
work with the people that we work with, and we learn so much from them, and hopefully we can support them as part of their journey. But we can only do that if we're in the professional mindset to do it, and also, like we said earlier, emotionally intelligent. And I think good
Resilience,
quality
resilience
training
you
brings
mentioned
that about.
earlier, I'd say
Yeah,
resilience, as you mentioned earlier, I'd said it's that's key at the end.
it really is. Yeah,
Yeah.
really
And
is.
I suppose, Bernie, the biggest challenge is the measuring the impact of training. That can be the biggest
Mm.
challenge. It can be difficult as well. How can organizations know whether professional development activities are improving care outcomes?
Yeah,
Do,
I think
would you be
I
happy
I
with
think
putting more paperwork into place, or how can we? Does it have to be a formal measurement, or could it be an informal one? What are your thoughts on that?
in my own opinion, obviously over the years, paperwork has increased, and for obvious reasons, So it's looking about making sure, first of all, the paperwork within your system is fit for purpose, and it's not we're not duplicating along the way, but good quality. That's where I'm going back to the report writing. So it's not about the volume, it's about the quality of what is written, because everything's a legal document. But I think it's more about looking, like I said, observation on the floor. You can see it in practice. You can see then, like I said, the terminology written into reports, but you can also see that the person understands what they're writing about. So it's not just I'm going to pick something from, for example, if you go back to TCI, I'm going to pick a behavior support technique, but actually it doesn't fit the situation. So that's to show me you're able to write some terms, but it actually doesn't, the context isn't there. So it's about reflecting on all of those things with people. Um, and I think sometimes what we found as well is time constraints are an issue, because sometimes people are maybe developing within roles, and then you find that they're not getting the time for proper induction. And then you
Right.
can see where things fall down, because if somebody is moving, say, progressing up the ladder a little bit, and they haven't time to be get the training they need to be a leader or supervisor, and then they're suddenly supervising their peers and things like that, with no disrespect to the person, they're doing their best. But without the additional supports of proper induction or training within that role, how are they meant to guide others and bring other people forward? And then what you do is it's like dominoes, where it all starts falling down a little bit. And then people are just kind of going around in circles. So I think really, while there are budgets and there are staff pressures and time constraints, I always say what takes longer in the beginning, then later on costs you less, and
Yes.
and it takes a
I'm
shorter
safer at
time.
the end. Yeah.
Absolutely. So it's putting that time and putting the resources behind it in the beginning, and then hopefully it will lead to less turnover, staff turnover. So you're talking about, the consistency there. Turnover, we're seeing better outcomes for individuals. So we might see, for instance, less episodes of behaviors that might challenge, or you see for the people within our services, they just overall their well-being comes out a little bit better, because you can see that they're happy or at peace of where they're at, and because they feel that they're getting emotional and environmental support from the staff team. And I think so. I think you see that in the outcomes for the people that we work with as well. You know,
That's
um,
it.
through their own presentations and their level of
That,
happiness.
that's it. Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. And Bernie, could you share an example where post training reflection led to an improvement in practice? Have you any examples across your experience, or
Absolutely,
throughout your experience? Sorry.
I have loads. I don't want to take up your whole day, but I just talk about a situation recently whereby I would have delivered so I'm kind of working, because we kind of do some consultancy as well and support organizations outside of the training room. So there's an organization I'm currently working with, and we'll just say, for example, we did some of them did core TCI training, and some others did some of the refreshers. Um, and they had been through, so we'll just say there's a change management occurring in the organization, and uh, there was a bit of a lapse in the kind of the training and development, and we'll just say the culture. There's a focus on the culture at the moment. So within that, I was brought in to do some, we'll just say, reflective sessions with some of the staff team following on from the training. So what we were reflecting on, different things that maybe they were challenged with, different incidents, and maybe the mindset of the people at the time. But the feedback following the reflective sessions, because we were able to go in depth one to one, then we were able to look at the models that to work with him, but we were also able to look at the impact on the individual. And what we did was we reflected on, brought it back to baseline, what it was like for the person, got them to think about the young person that they were supporting and where they were coming from and everything, and then looking at the support strategies that were put in place for them. And the feedback at the end of it was hugely positive, from the individuals to myself at the end, where they said they felt it was so, because it was tailored exactly to them, but actually we were talking about the impact of training as well and how it fits in with all of that. And then the feedback from the organization, they said, even the individuals said that they they are feeling and seeing a change in their own practice because of
Okay,
their mindsets following those sessions and following the training. So they were actually able to piece it together, and the organization said they're actually seeing a dramatic improvement just in the service provision and the I suppose the consistency between the staff team as well, because there was a lot, some people were, what would you say, had one mindset and other people had a different mindset. So now it's kind of starting to come together where people are starting to think on the same page. And
that's it.
the outcomes then for the young people themselves, they're seeing a marked improvement because of the change of approach, we'll say. So
Yeah,
the escalations aren't the same as they would have been, and that's a
that's it.
great outcome for an individual young person who's able to express themselves in a way, and they, because things don't change overnight, so
That's it. Yeah,
it's about working the longevity of it, I suppose. But that would be one example. So even putting
very
in
good.
yeah, the supports following the training, the one-to-ones, and I'm not just saying, getting external in like myself, but within the company even, to
Yeah.
be able to follow on
Again,
and
again,
really
that brings us
explore.
back. That brings us back to the culture piece. Everything is about changing our culture, and
It
changing our
really is.
mindset, which is part of the culture as well. What challenges do you see currently facing the sector in maintaining a culture of learning? Going back to
I,
culture,
th-
if you
yeah,
had to mention, if you have to bring up two challenges, what would they be?
well, first of all, staff retention, and staff recruitment are the biggest things I see at the moment. Um, just in terms of we have evolved in the sector, and there's so many diverse ranges of services now as well. So it's about being able to actually able to meet the staffing requirements, I think, is a big challenge across the country, not just in social care. So that would be it. And then that falls down to resources, because organizations then are having to train people and then retrain new people if people leave. And, so sometimes it's like a treadmill. And they feel that, they haven't necessarily the time to embed that then, because when they start embedding it into with the existing teams, we'll say, and then there's changes in the teams, it's almost like we have to go back to drawing board, but we haven't got
That's it.
time
Yeah.
because everyone has to hit the ground running. So they're huge challenges.
I suppose, and I suppose that's a hard one for you as an external trainer, because that really goes to the company or to the organization to retain staff.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It's difficult.
And
Yeah,
we've spoken about challenges, and we haven't thought about technology and AI. How is
yeah,
technology and AI reshaping professional development? After COVID, we went into this online meetings wave, and now I feel that we're going towards AI. I see 9 out of 10 reports that I get every month. They're I can agree that they're all done
expect.
with AI to some extent. So how
Yeah.
is this reshaping your field as a trainer?
Well, I suppose we don't at the moment. We don't tend to use AI. We kind of do it the good old fashioned way and kind of research and look. But it definitely. I'm kind of looking at it as it emerges. Maybe I'm a little bit scared of it at the moment, but it's not always accurate either, you know. So sometimes I will
No,
put things in to see what it'll come up with, and you're kind of going, well, that's
no,
you know, it's yeah. So you have to be very careful with it. I think it's not something that people should really be dependent on. Um,
that's it.
Definitely it still needs overview and research. But I think if you were going about, for example, in organizations writing daily logs and relying on AI, you'd be kind of very wary of things like that. You have to look at the essence of the person, which AI will get things that you type in. But I think, yeah, I would just be reluctant to be writing up logs and things like that within, because like I said, they're legal documents and things like that. Fair
Yeah,
enough if you're using it to research a little piece of training, it might throw up something or rephrase it a little bit for you, and you're kind of going, oh, well, that actually reads a little bit better. But the context still needs to be there, and the facts need to be there. So it's
that's it.
it's still, yeah, we still
And are
have
you
to be
are you
mindful.
experiencing any challenges, let's say with your learners, for example, in terms of motivation because of AI?
Well, not so much AI, but I would say the digital form. So like the blended learning. So obviously, like I said, with COVID, we all became a little bit more experts at using different platforms, like Teams and Zoom and all of that kind of thing. And sometimes it is easier for organizations because they might have people in different places, or it's they don't people don't have to travel, so you can do learning online. So trying to keep the quality of that. So the blended sessions that we would do to be interactive with an instructor, but we have very clear guidance on it, as in people have to be on camera at all times. You need
That's
to see
it.
people engaging. You can't be doing other tasks, and definitely you see people driving and you're like, I can't train you if you're driving, health and safety. So
You'll see
sorry,
people
but
on bed,
we've seen
lie down and
lots of things. Yeah, loads of things. So we always put in a very strict kind of criteria, because what we say to the organization as well, we can't stand over. We have to be able to stand over what we deliver. And if you have
that's it.
somebody who, you know, with something as serious as child protection, say, or medication, things like that, that they might be looking at, and you're kind of going, I wouldn't be able to. So we don't certify people if we don't feel that the session is fully engaged with somebody, and we will feed back to organizations on that, because we wouldn't be able to stand over that. Now, my preference would always be in the training room, but
That's
the
it.
way things are gone, like the challenges we just talked about a minute ago, about staff kind of having enough resources on the floor or whatever, so people can't release staff sometimes to travel an hour and a half to train and whatever. So they very much might be, they have that space for the few hours, but they might be in work straight after that, or they might even be
Yeah,
doing it in a room in work. So you have to adapt to that as well. But I definitely think the training room itself just has a whole different
100%
impact.
dynamic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
a whole different dynamic. Right, Bernie, looking ahead, what areas of knowledge or skill do you think will become most important for social care professionals?
Knowledge or skill. Well, I definitely think um at the moment, as people are getting registered with Carew and everything, I do think there has to be, because you have to anyway, have keep your portfolio or whatever. But I do think the biggest focus needs to be on organizations now and individuals, because it's not just about organizations. We all have an onus on ourselves to take into account training and to develop ourselves, and get that hunger to learn and to know more about things. So I do think um, keeping your reflective logs. I think seeing everything as being valuable. I think um, like I said, going into supervision forums, and actually being prepared for them to get the most from it. So I think emerging areas of focus would need to be on that. But and as we look at AI, I suppose we need to monitor
Yeah,
that to make
that's the
sure
most.
that it's not taken over, and that our services are very much personalized and based on each person as an individual. So
Yeah,
we don't just become kind of generic like that, and that we don't lose the individualized nature of the service that we provide.
that's
Um,
it.
like I said,
100%.
it has its place, but
Yeah,
we need to make sure that it's still being the care of the individual is to the forefront.
that's it. And
I do
finally,
think.
Bernie, what message would you like to leave with social care practitioners about the long-term value of professional growth?
Okay, well, how I see it is that if you think about it, and what we say in training as well, your growth, your continuous professional development is actually the foundation of somebody else's care and their healing. So without us professionally growing, we're not going to be able to um, provide that. We have to realize that we are the foundation of somebody else's life story. So it's not just about knowledge. It is about becoming the type of practitioner who can hold that emotional space, who is able to offer emotional and environmental
Yeah,
safety, and kind of help to transform somebody's life. I always say you never forget how people make you feel. So it's not about the words sometimes, or you might not even see certain developments or changes with individuals. But what somebody holds in their heart for the rest of their life is how somebody made them feel. And if that just means that they felt safe, they felt loved, they felt cared for, then you're doing an awful lot. But unless you're emotionally attuned, you're self-aware, and you're able to be group aware and aware of your colleagues, aware of the people that you care for, you're not going to be able to do that, because the impact we have on people is actually profound, and it can destroy somebody's life, or it can enhance somebody's life. And like I said, we're there to provide support and a service to somebody. And what I would like anybody that I've ever cared for to walk away with saying, I actually felt for the time that they were in my company, that they felt valued, cared for, and respected. And we can only do that if we're constantly challenging ourselves and professionally developing ourselves, because it is a huge impact on somebody else's life. It's a massive responsibility.
yeah, that's it. That's a powerful message to close on. Learning as an act of self-care and professional renewal. That's it. Bernie, thank you for sharing your insights and experience with us today.
Thanks so much, Haran. Thanks for listening to me. I could talk, like I said, for days on these kind of things. So I really appreciate you having me.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in today. If you are a social care professional or social care manager, we hope this discussion encourages you to reflect on how training can be transformed into everyday practice. Join us next time as we continue to explore the themes shaping care, community, and professional development across Ireland.